All right, Culinary 2. Today we are doing cinnamon rolls. Just a quick backstory on this recipe. This is my great-grandmother's recipe, so has a little special place in my heart. My mom also, at her bakery, this was the #1 selling item in the bakery by far. Every day we do minimum 5 dozen of these cinnamon rolls out the door, but up to 30 plus, whatever we can make with such a small staff. Since they are made from scratch, sometimes when you're running a business with scratch made items, you just have to know that you're gonna run out at some point, and that's okay. I just watched a business do it this weekend, and they explained that to their customers. We don't pull things out of a box here. We make them from scratch, so we run out sometimes. So while this recipe is super close to my heart, and I've done it 10,000 times, this is probably the recipe I've made the most in my life ever, just due to the huge volume we made it at the bakery. It has been a minute since I made them, because when you make that many of something, you typically just don't like it anymore. So it was a really good reminder. I have my mise en place here. I want to point out a couple things before we get started. When you get out your KitchenAid mixers, we'll need our KitchenAid mixers today, just like most days, right? Instead of grabbing your paddle attachment, you're going to grab your dough hook for this recipe. So make sure you're grabbing your dough hook. I know we don't usually use these. They go in just as the paddle does, just tight in there like everything else. You're also going to need your thermometer. Your thermometer here is digital. We're going to need it when we go over to the stovetop in a second to temp our milk. When you turn it on, first of all, to make sure we can turn them on, make sure you see that little F. There are so many groups I've seen while cooking, especially people who are newer to cooking like you guys, some of you, that they'll temp it, they'll be like, Miss Reynolds, I don't know why, it's just not coming to temp. And I walk over and their thermometer's on Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So make sure that's not you. You just hit that little FC button and it'll switch back and forth until you see the F, like 70.3 F, right? All right, we also need our digital scale here. We'll do it to measure out our flour. I've already pre-measured it. It is 1 pound, 9 ounces of flour. A quick little side note on that is that when we did make them at the bakery, I've cut this recipe in a third for you guys, because this would be well over, what was it? 4 pounds, I can't remember right now. 4 pounds, 12 ounces of flour, because that's how many we were making at one time, and then batch after batch after batch, right? So we'll need that to measure. This is the only part that you will measure with your scale for this recipe. Everything else is done in cups, tablespoons, or teaspoons. Our whisk, normal. Our small saucepan, this is our 1.5 quart saucepan. You'll need this to melt your buttermilk. We'll talk about it in a second on the stovetop. We're not making a custard like we did for pâte à choux and the pastry cream in that. This is different, okay? So know that you will need this, but it's not the exact same. We're gonna need an extra bowl for when we temper our eggs and milk together, like we did for the pastry cream. Then I have all the rest of our things. You guys won't have to do this, but I just wanted to show you real quick. In here, I just have room temperature water. I put my eggs into my room temperature water so that they got to room temp. We need room temp eggs for this recipe. That's the way tempering works. But I forgot to take my eggs out of the fridge. It had been a long day. You guys just did pâte à choux today when I'm filming this. So, as you know, big day for us. I just wasn't thinking about it. But to get those to temperature real quick, I just put them in room temp water, and that will help bring them warmer out of the fridge. All right, I'm gonna meet you at the stove for our next step. All right, so we're at our stovetop. We have our 1.5 quart saucepan here. I'm going to turn this on to a medium heat to start. I have 1 cup 2/3 of milk that I'm going to pour in here. You never want to leave your pan on for long without putting the heat, or without putting something on it with our heat on. The bottom of our pan will burn. I have my vanilla that I'll be putting in here. I have 2 tablespoons of butter that needs to be melted. And then I have sugar that I'll put into here in just a moment. I'll put it here just for a second. And then I want to give this a little stir just so we know it's not sticking. Remembering we're putting our handle to the center for food safety here. Get this going. And then I like to stir this as I put the sugar in, just so I know that nothing is sticking to the bottom. If your recipe tastes like burnt sugar now, it's probably going to taste like burnt sugar the whole way. I'll give it a whisk here. Set my whisk to the side here. And then I'm going to temp my milk. So I have it on hold. I'm going to take it off of hold, place this in. Since we just put it on the stove, we're at about 70-ish degrees right now. So we're going to wait until our butter melts, but we do not want to go over 120 degrees. If you go over 120 degrees, our tempering process will not work. So I'm going to come back to you in just a moment when my milk is to temp. All right, I just pulled my milk mixture off of the stovetop. I checked the temperature. Something really handy that our thermometers have is a hold button right here on the edge. So you can always hold the temp if you're pulling up and you need to check what that looks like. I'm under 120, but everything is melted. I'm at about 114 right now, so it's perfect. Just like we learned for pâte à choux, we need to temper our eggs so that we don't get scrambled eggs. So what I'm going to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to take this milk mixture and just pour it into the liquid measuring cup so that I don't have to worry about pouring. It's a little easier on my wrist. So I'm going to start whisking my eggs. I have my 2 eggs in here. Pour a little drizzle of my hot milk and whisk it in until it is fully combined. Then I'm going to do a little bit more. Notice how I'm not stopping whisking at this point. And a bit more. You really want to bring these eggs up to temp while keeping them in their liquid form, not their scrambled form. If we were to get over 120 on accident with our milk mixture, you have to wait till it cools back down under 120 or this recipe will not work. I'm gonna go ahead and combine the rest. We're at a good point. All right, so we should have something like a beginning of a custard, but not quite. Right, we're stopping the cooking process here. I'm gonna continue to whisk for another minute, and then I'm gonna meet you back over at the mixer. All right, so I'm back to my stand mixer. For this part, I'm actually going to take my dough hook out. I'm going to pour in my 1 pound, 9 ounces of flour. Oh, got a little flour cloud. Then I have my salt here and my heaping tablespoon of active yeast. I'm gonna take, and just like we do for most dry mixtures, just like when you make cookies or anything, I'm gonna whisk it together really quick so I know it's nice and incorporated. And we're not going to have all of our yeast in 4 of our cinnamon rolls and not the other 8. All right, I'm gonna attach my dough hook, put up my mixer, and then I will add our egg milk mixture here as I put this on a low speed. I'm gonna stop it, and my flour has kind of piled up on the walls of my bowl here. Take my rubber spatula and mix it in a bit more. Try to get all of it off the rubber spatula. And then turn this back on to a low. Now that it's on low, I'm going to turn it up to a medium We won't go above a 6 out of 10 on this recipe. I'll let it go for a second. It's building back up on my wall, so I'm going to take it down again, wait for it to stop. Scrape my sides, make sure all my flour is getting nice and incorporated. I am going to turn this mixer back onto a medium. And right now, we have sort of a blob in here. We're going to turn this onto a medium speed. I'm so sorry, lost my words there. I'm gonna turn this onto a medium speed until we have a solid sort of ball rolling around on itself and not on the walls of our bowl here. So this should take about 10 minutes. I'll meet back with you at that point. All right, so this is a check-in of how your dough should be looking at the end of the time. So, do you see how it's an independent ball on its own? It's not sticking to the bottom. It is not sticking to the bottom. There's not a big edge holding it on at any point. When it goes, it's basically just all on its own, mixing around. This is what it should look like. So let's walk through the next steps. All right, so if I were doing this at home on a long Saturday or whatever it was, I would take my dough hook off at this point, which your dough hook should come out pretty easily and pretty clean. I definitely still have like some remnants on it, but I'm not totally pulling dough off. And I would just place a towel over it, wait a couple hours until our dough had doubled in size. When I did do this last weekend to prepare for this video again, my dough started just about the same here at my KitchenAid mixer, and it rose to the very top of the bowl, and that's when I knew it was ready to go to the next step. However, you guys are doing this in 3 separate days. So at this point, I'm going to have you take your dough, put it into a different bowl than your KitchenAid mixer, because multiple groups use our KitchenAid mixers, right? So we have to prepare it for the next person. I'll have you put it in a medium or large bowl that you find in your kitchen, one of the plastic colored bowls. Try to get all the big pieces out with it that might be a little bit stuck in there. Then we'll wash this, put it away like normal. Here, you're going to saran wrap your bowl, put your kitchen name and period on it, and I'll put it in the fridge. Then tomorrow, a couple hours before class starts, I'll take them all out so they can slow rise for our next step. All right, moving on to our next step. All right, guys, so it is day 2. We're on to day 2 now. I have my brown sugar here. I have about a pound of brown sugar. Then I have 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. Just going to dump the cinnamon right into my brown sugar. You can whisk it or you can just move it around with your fingers like this. This is going to be the center, the filling of our cinnamon rolls. You want to make sure it is good and mixed in. So you have cinnamon all over in those cinnamon rolls, not just in one spot. 1 pound is about an estimate, but I'll tell you guys, when we had the bakery, we had a big, huge bin of this just always made. We'd put 25 pounds of brown sugar and a whole bottle of cinnamon together and just keep them running together. And you just pull from it and eyeball what it was. So this does not have to be an exact measurement, but we want to get pretty close because this is about what you'll need. So I have that there. I'm going to go rinse my hands for the next step, and then I'll show you what that will look like. All right, now that we have our cinnamon and brown sugar all mixed up, we're going to lightly flour our work surface, a clean work surface. I did already clean this off the video. If you notice, I have a bit of flour sectioned off. You could do that in one of your small mise en place bowls, your custard cups, or you could do just like I do. I put a small corner, about a half cup of flour there, and get it going. That way, we have it sectioned off. We don't just pull from the bin because our fingers are gonna get nice and grimy, and we don't want to be pulling from the bin again when we need flour again later. So we don't want to contaminate all of our flour. I'm going to take my French rolling pin, sprinkle it all over, make sure that the flour is nice and coated on here. That's to keep our cinnamon roll dough from sticking to it all over. I have our dough here. It has risen quite a bit. I'm gonna take it here, put my bowl to the side so it's out of your guys' view. Push this down. We're looking for a long rectangle. So when we roll it out, we have a large rectangle. I'm gonna take, when we use our French rolling pins, we use the palms of our hands, usually the finger bed here and the palm base here. And we roll. If you notice, I already have some dough sticking to my French rolling pin. Super normal. You're just gonna keep adding flour. You can sprinkle a little bit on top of your dough if you need to. Here, it's getting a little bit longer than I want. I want it a little wider. So I'm going to take my French rolling pin, reflour it, and roll it long ways so I get a bunch of cinnamon rolls, not just a couple. We should be able to get 12 cinnamon rolls out of this recipe, sometimes even 13. A baker's dozen rather than a dozen. And again, we're looking for even, and we're looking for a large rectangle, maybe a little bit bigger than the width of your hips or your shoulders, depending on who you are, just kind of a guide. All right, it doesn't have to be super, super perfect, but we want as accurate as we can get so that our cinnamon rolls look as uniform and they're not all lumpy, bumpy, strange looking. All right, at this point, if you wanted to make, I know right now they're super trendy, like blueberry rolls or pumpkin rolls or whatever it is, rather than adding the cinnamon brown sugar mix, you would add whatever filling you want in your cinnamon roll, your blueberry roll at this point. But we're gonna do cinnamon rolls. So here we go on our cinnamon rolls. I have my butter melting over there, so I'll bring it over. It's 1.5 sticks or 12 tablespoons of butter melting on our stovetop. All right, so now I have my melted butter here. I'm going to take my pastry brush. You can go like this, but I always start by pouring a little bit out onto my dough and start brushing it around like this. We need all of our dough to be covered in butter, a nice thick layer of butter. So I'm spreading it out just like this, all over. Clearly need a little bit more over here. Mixing in the white part and the clear part of your butter, the fat and the oil, so that you're not just getting oil on one section, you're getting that nice tasty butter as well. So right here, dash more right here. Just kind of have to feel this sort of part out as you go here. Like this. And then a little bit like that. So I used about 1 stick of butter. Maybe you use a little bit more or a little bit less. But I do want to make sure that you're using a healthy amount. It's not just a brush on layer. It should be pooling a little bit onto your dough here. Like that. And then I'm just going to take my cinnamon sugar mixture here and start sprinkling it all over my dough until it's nice and evenly coated. We do want to make sure that we're covering it evenly, and it should be a pretty solid cover. That's how you get that good mixture inside that turns into that really ooey gooey cinnamon roll that we all want this to be, not just a sweet bread. When our cinnamon roll bakes, oh, there goes my preheated oven. When our cinnamon roll bakes, this will almost caramelize, and that's how it gets kind of sticky goodness inside. And again, we want to make sure that we're getting a nice even mixture, a nice even cover here, so that our cinnamon rolls aren't wonky. If you ever have any left over, once you place them into your baking dish, you can always just sprinkle that on top, just like this. I like to do a little extra butter kind of sprinkled all over when I'm done in the drier parts. You can never have enough sugar or butter in a pastry. So that's what gives them their goodness. Like this. I recognize that this will take you guys a little bit longer, but it should look something like this when you're done. Just finish out my butter. Why let it go to waste when it's sitting right there? And it's only gonna make this better. Add it in. And then now we start our rolling. So you're just going to take your hands and we start on the edge here. Push it up so that, get it ready. It might stick to the counter a little bit right there. I do want to note, because I've seen a lot of this year, I can put my pan down real hot onto the stainless steel table because stainless steel does not burn when heat is on it. However, if you are on a countertop, you cannot just put your pot down. You need to put a pot holder under it or put it on the stove top or put it onto one of our stainless steel tables in our classroom. All right, so I'm gonna take my cinnamon roll and start evenly rolling it up here. The key to cinnamon rolls is making sure that your roll stays tight. So it kind of looks like the cat paw, how cats kind of massage. You kind of look like you're doing that motion, but really I'm tucking this under, tucking it under, rolling it, rolling it. This is how we create our spiral. So I'm all the way up, I'm kind of pulling it under itself to make sure that that wrap is tight. If I just roll it like this, it will not be tight enough and the cinnamon roll just apart. So keep it tight, tight, tight like this. Push some of my cinnamon sugar over here. We're missing a little bit on the end. Keep it like this. And again, it's okay if you're not going as fast as I am going in these moments, because I know I've rolled a few more cinnamon rolls than any of you. This is definitely not something that is just for anyone. I would say when we had our bakery, after a few years of these, my dad was probably the #1 cinnamon roller in the bakery. Maybe if none of us want to admit it, but honestly, he was probably beating all of us on it because he could just go, go, go. So I'm gonna wipe off my hands and I'll cut off my edges here. Oh, darn it, I ripped it right here. Try to piece it together. All right, so I have my serrated knife here, my bread knife. I'm going to take, without cutting the counter, just oh so gently, cutting off my ends here. It's okay to bake these, are not so perfect ends, but we'll set those aside for now. For now, I want you to take, and we're gonna do about 2 inches like this for a cinnamon roll. And then we will cut to the next one. Again, we are not cutting into our countertops here. We are simply like, just like this. That's how gentle I'm going. I could do it with my fingertips. So again, to the next. Please don't do it on your fingertips. I'm just showing you. So when I look at my cinnamon roll, you can see the spiral, just like this. And then I'm just placing them together in a pan. Cinnamon rolls do expand quite a bit. However, it's even better when they expand into each other. So you don't have to worry about how far away you're spacing them, because they're going to expand into each other and you just pull them out of that ooey gooey goodness. This. right, and as my pan fills up here, I can take my end pieces and just kind of push them in if I want to. Because even though it doesn't look super pretty, they still taste good, right? You could also grab another small pan if needed to bake these into. So at this point, my cinnamon rolls are all together in here like this. If I had extra butter or cinnamon at this point, I would pour it over the cinnamon sugar or butter mixture, just like this. I would pour over my butter and then sprinkle on my cinnamon sugar mixture, just like this, because all it's gonna do is create some gooey gooey goodness around the cinnamon rolls as well. At this point, they need to rise again. So again, if I were at home, I would just take my towel, place it over it, wait till they're expanded double in size, about an hour, maybe 2, and then bake them off. But since we were here at school, we're going to, again, saran wrap these, place them in the fridge, and wait until tomorrow, which will be day 3. So stay tuned. All right, so I just want to show you, I'm left with quite a mess here from my cinnamon rolls. I'm going to take my bench scraper and just make a nice little pile. And then we're going to scrape it up this, straight into the trash. Maybe you need to take a bowl and place it in there and then take it over to the trash. But either way, the easiest way to do this is a bench scraper, which is what it's for, scraping our bench. Crazy. All right, so while our cinnamon rolls are in the oven, we're on day 3. I put our cinnamon rolls in the oven after that final rise that happened this morning. We are going to start our cream cheese frosting, because let's be honest, it's the best part of the cinnamon roll. It's when you have that like ooey gooey center and you have that big glunk of frosting. Love it. So we're gonna put in our room temperature 16 ounces or 1 pound of cream cheese here. Whoops. A little inside information into this lab is that I've never made this small of a batch of cream cheese frosting. So I had to really think it through and be like, oh, how much should I put in of this or that? I have 4 tablespoons or half a stick of butter. I'm going to start creaming those together. And I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of half and half. 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Get this going. Turn this off for a second just so I make sure that you can hear me. I have 4 cups of powdered sugar in here. You're not going to add it all at once. You're going to add it about a half cup at a time. If you add it all at once, it just globs together. We don't have a nice even spread. So here we go. You can watch this real quick. We're going on the very lowest setting, which is a 2. I'm just going to start slowly putting in my cream cheese. Reminder that you only want to go to a 2 because powdered sugar is going to poof. You turn it up a little bit between, get it nice and incorporated. Put it back to a 2. Put about a half cup of powdered sugar in there. Let it move around for a minute. Put it back up to a high really quickly. While that is going, I forgot to grab my rubber spatula, so I'm going to grab it now. Should have mise en place this, but totally forgot. Back to a 2, and another half cup. Then a little bit higher. It's starting to look like frosting and not just a big lump of cream cheese in there. At this point, I'm going to turn it off, put my mixer down, and scrape the sides so I know everything's getting nice and incorporated, and I'm not going to have a big glob of cream cheese, and I'm not going to have a big glob of powdered sugar. Pull it back up, place it on a 2, and get it going. Another half cup in. Place it, on a 2. Wait for this batch to incorporate. See, I went too fast right away. I have a little cloud going. Makes the cleanup much harder. A little bit more. Back to a 2. Our final amount here. And then finally we're going to stop our mixer, scrape it back down one more time, and let it go for about 2 minutes to make sure we have all of our clumps of both powdered sugar and cream cheese left. Not left in there. And it should look something like this after we're done. It's not gonna look much different than this. We just won't see any little lumps of cream cheese in there. And then once you're ready to eat your cinnamon roll, you don't put it on until you're ready to eat in case you want to warm a cinnamon roll back up later. Or you can put them all on ahead of time. Totally up to you. So I'm just going to turn it on, and then they just go on our cinnamon rolls when we're finished. All right.